Okay? All right. Hello, all of you wonderful people out there in podcast land. Welcome to another episode of Black and White Reviews. My name is Will.
My name is Lee.
My name is Chuck.
And this week we are continuing our coverage of Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm sorry, I mean Stranger Things season
Warrior
4.
Child? Is this Warrior Child?
Basically Nightmare on Elm Street, basically Warrior Child, whatever you want to say. This week is the episode chapter 3, The Monster and the Superhero. I'm gonna be real honest. I don't care. I don't care about this episode at all. I want it to be next week
Okay.
really
I know.
badly. I want it to be next week so bad. I cannot hide it. I have to get it out there, out in the open, just so the two of you know what you're working with me right now. I'll talk about it. We'll go through it. I don't care. I don't care because of how monumental next week's episode is. I will say that, and I will leave it at that. Chuck, you are in for a treat. If you walk out in next week and it is not your favorite episode of the series thus far, I will be very surprised. I will be very surprised, and I will leave it at that. But we're not here to talk about next week. Too bad. We're here to talk about this week, The Monster and the Superhero. Chuck, please, the de facto virgin of this series, please share your thoughts.
Am I still a Stranger Things virgin?
Yes,
Well,
you haven't finished it yet. You
3
haven't
and a
caught
half
up.
seasons in.
No, you are. You have not seen this, and this is what everything's been building up
So
to.
I watched this earlier in the week. I watched it again today, and I said this feels like it's the second to last episode, but it's not.
Mm-mm.
It feels like next week should be the finale. I have never been, since Breaking Bad, I have never been so amped up for the next episode than the last 10 to 15 minutes of this episode makes me feel. And, I'll say this, Will. If it wasn't for the last 10 to 15 minutes of this episode and how it crescendos and how it builds up,
Yeah.
and when the doctor comes and picks 11 up and this whole thing happens and they have the
Waffles.
they have the conversation, this episode would have been kind of a flat line for me. But
Yes.
this last 10 minutes, I
Yeah.
watched it and I was like,
You're on the edge
I-
of your seat. Yeah.
I was on the edge of my seat. I have been so anxious. I've had to restrain myself from watching the next episode because I know the next episode is Dear Billy, and I've heard so many things. Like, this is, I guess, like the number one episode out of all 4 seasons. It's like the most famous episode. I have one fear and one fear only about what's going to happen next episode. I hope it doesn't happen. And the reason why I wish that this was the second to last episode is because if what I'm afraid of happening next episode happens, if it was the season finale, they could have found a way to prevent it from happening.
Eh,
If it does happen.
Mhm.
And don't say anything, Lee.
I'm not saying
With
anything.
your poker
Chuck.
faces.
So
I'm
it's
gonna-
really it's and I wanna I wanna put a little context to this because I think you're right. I think this is the closest thing to that Breaking Bad feel. So the episode before Ozymandias was Tahajali. And the end of that episode was when the Nazis and the DEA and everybody's there in the middle of the desert and they're about to have that epic shootout. That's how you feel coming out of that episode, and you're ready for what Ozymandias was. I agree with Chuck 100%. This very much gets you ready for Dear Billy. It does such an amazing job, and I promise you, Chuck, you can try to do all the guessing and speculating that you want to. You're not gonna get it. You're not gonna get it. Even though there are things that are so on the nose, you're not gonna get it. So yeah. But
So I
yeah,
have-
you're right. You're absolutely
I have
right.
a theory. I have a theory
Ooh, I
that
like
I'll
that.
share in the spoiler territory.
Okay.
But I mean, I'll say this without actually getting into it. There's been someone who's been puppeted almost every season. And I think there's one person right now being used or puppeted or being able to bring everybody together.
Mhm.
They're making it so it doesn't seem obvious, but at the end of this episode, it kind of makes it seem obvious, but it's just a theory. So, but I will say this again: my energy to watch the next episode is higher than how I actually felt about this episode. If that makes any sense.
It does.
Like, I'm more stoked to see what happens next than actually watch. But it was only because of the last 10 minutes. I think the conversation at the end and just how the music, the score builds, and the doctor and it's Dr. C, is it
Dr. Owens.
Owens? Okay. Dr. Owens and Eleven have the conversation. I was like, he's building her up,
That's
and
so cool.
she's now Obi-Wan. She is their only hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
Straight up says it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's fantastic. It is amazing. Yeah. Yeah. There's some
Okay.
parts in there. I was like, there were some parts in there. Murray's great. Murray's just fantastic.
I love when they come home.
She's a regular old housewife.
No, but I love when they come home and what's his name? Now I'm completely blanking on his name. The stoner
Argyle?
older brother.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my
yeah.
god.
Argyle.
Yeah. Oh
Huh?
no, Jonathan.
Jonathan. He's just like, "Hi,
Jonathan.
Murray." Like he's just it was so funny and so perfect the way that it was done. It was perfect.
Yeah, we'll
I'm getting
definitely
ahead
get
of
into
my-
that
yeah.
scene at some point.
Yeah, I know you
Um,
because you love Murray.
yeah. I love Murray. He's so good.
Okay,
Buckle up, of course.
Oh yeah.
because this'll
You
save
need
me
to put your seatbelt on. He's like, yeah, she does.
in a plane.
Buckle up.
I love how he's reading karate magazines.
Oh.
Like, this is the last guy you're going to think of who's doing karate.
Yeah. So
Does
anyway,
he ever use karate in the TV
I'm
show?
not talking about anything. I just want to tell you how I feel about this episode, please.
Okay, go ahead.
Please. I love this episode. So my guess is that Will has watched this series probably a couple times over already.
Yes.
Good guess? Okay, I've only watched it once through.
Okay.
This week I got to watch this episode twice, which is my normal thing. But I couldn't wait to watch it again, so I watched it like 3 days ago. Usually I try to watch it like just before we talk about it, so there's things that are fresh. No, I just really wanted to watch it while I had a moment, and I watched it again. I don't remember what happens in Dear Billy. I just remember that it was really, really good. Because I mean, obviously, you hear something called Dear Billy, who would be writing something or whatever saying Dear Billy?
Yeah.
We understand we're getting more into this character, so I know that that's what's coming up, but I still love this episode. The way that it ends, the way that it builds, and then you get that, like, okay, we're getting pumped up, and then you've got, like, this really, like, sinister, creepy ending. You're like, whoa, we just got all pumped up, and then we're seeing what we're facing again. We're seeing the enemy. It's like, ooh, okay, like, it really did have a great build, this whole episode, the way that everything went together. Seeing all the different characters and where they are, what their focus is in this whole thing. You've got Lucas doing his own thing, and whoever else. Like, all these characters are all over the place doing their stuff, and you've got characters like you mentioned, Jonathan, who's just like uncharacteristically, not who he's been the entire time. He's like very different because he's
He's a pothead now.
obviously. Yeah, he's just straight up a stoner. No, they didn't call him podheads back in the days. They're just stoners.
Stoners, fine.
He's a stoner.
What's happening?
Alaska? What?
Can you pass the olive oil? That's wine.
That's wine. That's wine, dude. Oh man. Anyway,
It's like a plastic one.
You know what? I know
I
we're
was
not.
like-
I know we're not in spoiler territory right now, but like Murray's entire thing while the two of them are just
Skate
sitting there at the
attack.
table being stoned. He's just like, oh really? I have no idea who this is. Like, it's perfect. It's amazing.
Who is this? Still have no idea who you are. This is it's so good, but ooh, a skate attack! Like he gets all excited into the story. But you know, I Murray continues to just grow and grow into the best character in the show, and he's supposed to be the comic relief, but he's also like really really good. Like he's a genius.
Yeah.
And they put him in there as like the goofy conspiracy theorist early on, but he's been so right. You know, he's able to you know, understand characters so well, pick things up. You know, obviously we had the whole like the tension in season 2 and then the tension in season 3, you know, the romantic tension in those 2 different seasons. And then here he's just picking up, he's like, they're clearly on drugs, you know, like this is
Yeah.
funny to me.
What's
And
the
then-
worst that could happen?
so
They'll hang out, they'll smoke, they'll drink.
They'll get a little physical.
anyway,
They'll
Yeah.
smoke some ganja, experiment sexually.
And
you
she's
know,
just, like,
she's
freaking
like,
out.
What's
what?
the worst that could happen? She's so oblivious.
Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me, ma'am. I need to have you put your seatbelt on. Oh, of course. Buckle up. He's such a jerk.
He
and I
was
love
the
him.
best, but if it wasn't for him, this episode, I mean, outside of the last 10 to 15, if it wasn't for him, he kind of made this episode like come together. I'm with Lee on this one. I loved Murray in this episode. He was fantastic.
He's so good.
Okay.
All right. Well, all in all, I mean, I love this season. I don't think anything's been a stinker episode yet. You know, it's building. I mean, we're only 3 episodes in, and every one of them has been like, ooh, what's going to happen? Now, one thing that happened before, you were guessing that there was going to be like another death every single episode, and there wasn't in this one. You know, I mean, there was a body found, but you know, so I like that they're not just doing, and then the next episode, and then like, you know, something like Smallville or any show like that, when there's like, here's the bad guy this time and here's the death this time, or you know, they're not just doing that. They did it a couple of times just so you understand what's going on and it's multiple people,
Right.
but they're not just giving the same formulaic baloney in every episode, and that's what makes this show really cool. It's not some kind of like serialized, here's the next bad guy or whatever. It's
Right.
it's fantastic. So that all being said, I'm ecstatic, and I'm so happy to finally get this episode over and done with, so we can move on to the next one.
Lee, Will,
Lee,
Oh, wow.
Will,
Will?
11,
Because
Jane,
Lee and I look alike. Let me tell you.
same complexion.
I know,
I know, right?
Absolutely.
Indistinguishable.
The hair in the in the beard.
Indistinguishable.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
I'm
the
gonna echo
glasses.
everything. I'm gonna echo everything the two of you just said. I think this episode is fantastic for what it sets up, and that's kind of
Uncanny.
a shame that I feel that way. Like, this episode on its own by itself doesn't do a whole lot, but in the grand scheme of things, this episode was able to set up a whole lot. You know, in the last 10-15 minutes, like the two of you said. I love how all of the characters are kind of splintering off all over again. And non-spoiler, but kind of spoiler, you get, you know, Nancy and Robin who go off and they do their own thing, and they're like going to be like pseudo detectives or like trying to uncover the mystery and blah, blah, blah. And they had up in the library. And I think all that was fantastic to get the two of them like away so that Steve can be the babysitter all over again and try to take care of a bunch of kids. I think it's perfect. I think it's fantastic. I think the relationship between him and Dustin is on 10 in what they did in this episode. Even though their
Yes.
interaction was really
Yes.
small, I loved everything about it because Dustin
Perfect.
is able to just read through the facade and see through all of this nonsense and be like, no, you're doing this. I'm not implying, I'm not guessing, I am telling you you're doing this. And I thought that was amazing.
Sorry, not cool. I loved that back and forth.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
like, I'm gonna.
No, that was like over the line.
Yeah.
That was over
Yeah.
the line. Oh, sorry,
Sorry.
not cool.
Yeah.
And you just see them. They're just back and forth. It's
Yeah.
fantastic.
That
Yeah.
is true brotherly love. It's amazing.
Yeah. I I'm still not gonna be shy. I hate the whole Ruskies thing. I hate that the Russians are still involved. I hate that he's in a Russian prison. I think it's like, absolutely unnecessary. I think there could have been a much easier and cleaner way to do this. If it wasn't for the Russian story plot and we gotta go get Hop, this season would be a perfect 10 out of 10 for me. But because of the Russian storyline, this season probably falls down to around about an 8. Despite the fact that next week is like amazing. I don't care. All of that aside, I still have those feelings about this whole thing. And now you're introducing, you know, a whole nother character who's like, I'm working on the inside to help get you on the outside and I'm gonna get rich. Ha ha ha. And I think it's stupid. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I don't like it. I had an issue a couple of weeks ago when they did the whole Inception thing with the top spinning. I'm going to have the same issue with Vecna because he is jacked in exactly like Neo, and I have no idea why that has to be a thing. It's just, it is what it is, and we see more of it in this episode. And I'm not giving anything away. We saw that before, but it's just like, okay.
Wait, does he know Kung Fu?
Oh, that would be fantastic if he did.
Could you imagine that?
No, I can't
Could you
imagine that.
imagine that?
I can't
She
imagine.
just sits there, just goes,
I know Kung Fu.
Oh, that would be absolutely ridiculous. There's a couple of reveals or some revelations that we'll get into later that I think are really interesting, and it makes me worried for a couple of other characters that we saw in this episode. We'll get more into that later. Aside from that, yeah, I thought this episode was fantastic. When we get into spoiler territory, I'm probably gonna piss in somebody's Cheerios with some of my thoughts on the way that the dialogue went. Not a fan, but anyways, we can
Who's
move
Cheerios,
on.
mine or his?
We'll see.
Both. Because the two of you seem to really like a thing, and I just didn't. But I'm not going to get into that now. We can get into that later. For the most part, I'm done. We can move on. Chuck, you can do the honors and usher us right into spoiler territory if you want to.
Right into spoiler territory. With that being said, for the rest of this video podcast, join us on patreon.com/blackandwhitereviews. Support the podcast, help us grow. The more support we get, the more we can do for all of you. Find us on all of our socials at Black and White Reviews 1866 for YouTube and Instagram, and at Black and White Reviews on Facebook. All podcasts are free as norm. And with that being said, we're going to slip.
hold on a second. What types of things can people get if they become patrons?
If they become patrons, they can get some on top of the extended footage that we have here for the whole conversation. We have some great merch. We have some great goodies. We do every once in a while put up extra content as well too that you will find nowhere else but Patreon. So yeah, a couple extra goodies and some bonuses. So with that being said, yeah, and it starts as low as $3 a month.
Ooh. And as high as 2,000
$2,000.
$2,000.
400
pennies.
$2,466 for a lifetime.
$2,000.
So with that-
What do they get for $2,000?
They can take the
Lee.
show. They get Lee.
Get Lee.
if you
Value.
contribute, if you
Wait, if it's
contribute,
2,000 a month?
if
Okay,
you
hold on.
no,
lifetime.
hold on, it's right. If you contribute $2,000, we will come to wherever you are and rip apart your favorite movie for you live in person, right in front of you.
Yes.
You have to
Yes.
feed us, though. You do have to feed us.
Oh yeah, you have to feed us. Yeah, that's a
Oh, yeah.
must.
And
On top of the $2,000.
and fly
Yeah.
us.
So
Yeah.
so
And house us.
on top of the $2,000 still. So with that being said, here we go to spoiler territory. So
So this
Now that we're
doctor's
here-
dialogue at the end is ridiculous. It is so campy. It is so campy.